What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another edition of the podcast. My name is Ramon, and this is Dad's podcast project. And today we're in a new recording space. We're actually back inside of the house. It's been a while. I moved my podcasting setup outside into a separate area, and it was just not really working out. I mean, after a year of doing it, it was high time I find myself back inside. And so that's kind of what's been going on. If you're catching this on YouTube, you'll notice that there is no video with this podcast today because, well, with moving back into the house, I am also redoing my setup. So for the past year or so, I've sort of been refining the overall setup and the look and the feel of the space that I was creating these podcasts in. And now that I'm back indoors, I need to sort of redo all of that. One of the things that I'm going to be implementing is actually a standing/sitting desk. So I had tried the whole standing desk while I first started out. If you look back on some older YouTube videos, you'll see that I am in fact standing, and I find that it's a lot easier to have a conversation and to talk when you're standing. When you're sitting, at least for me, it feels like a little bit more constrictive. I don't know if you guys feel the same way whenever you're sitting down, but I remember back in like middle school when I took choir, and the choir instructor, the teacher, he was telling us how you need to sit up straight and really open up that breathing pathway so that your diaphragm has room to move and you can take in air and pronunciate and get those vocals out a little bit better. And I think the same goes for any form of speech or music, that for the most part, when you're standing or you're sitting up straight, it's a little bit easier. And well, being here, sitting in this chair, it's not really the most, I guess, comfortable for me to be able to speak. And then I'm also trying to figure out the audible tones with which I should use, because at the hour that I'm also recording, the kids are also taking their nap. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. There's going to be a video will be re-implemented in the future. I think the desk that I have on order, it should be in, it says Friday for pickup. So we'll see if that pans out. If not, then I mean, I'll just keep going with what I'm going with. I'm currently using a square card table or just folding table. And I mean, it gets the job done for now. Other things are, well, the last podcast that I had released about the kids hitting, it's never really a fun topic to talk about difficult times. And one of the things that I did do in more of a proactive sense was research literature that might be informative and provide me with maybe a better sense of understanding and clarity with what's going on in my son's mind or in his life. So this book, I don't currently have it in front of me, but it is a book that I found on Amazon. And it kind of just breaks down or provides a different perspective rather than, oh, he's just being difficult or he's just craving attention. Whatever you want to tag it with, it more or less boils it down to maybe he's having a difficulty transitioning between what he wants to do and what we might want him to do. So an example of this would be if he's out playing, it might be difficult for him to say, okay, it's time to come inside now, or it's time to eat. For some kids, it's like they might be able to just flip a switch and it's like, okay, time to go in. Others, it's like, I'm sure other fellow parents, you've been there in the same situation where your kids, they're just kicking and screaming. They don't want to go back inside, or they don't want to leave the park. So it's that sort of difficulty making that transition that has then manifested itself into the potential for just physically lashing out and verbally lashing out in terms of yelling, screaming, swinging of the fists, things like that. Now, the book provides some pretty extreme examples of this. I take it with a grain of salt because I don't know if these are like actual families who have gone through this, or again, it's in a book, so it could be made up stories. Who knows? But at least I don't at this point. I've not looked further into that. However, it does make you feel a sense of, wow, that's extreme. At least we or I or whomever is not in that type of situation. It doesn't get that extreme. And some of these kids are much older, so at least described in the book. So it lends itself that, well, you found this book, you have time. And one of the things that it describes is sort of taglining it as difficulties. What are the difficulties in our child's life or in his day? Now, for those of you who want to think to yourselves, what could be difficult about being a kid? There's nothing difficult about it. You get all the food you want, you get snacks, you get toys, you don't have to work. It's great being a kid, right? Well, not for every kid. And typically not for a lot of them. It come to find, there may be things that we are doing as parents, myself and my wife, that might be frustrating for him. It might be frustrating him. And he can't convey that frustration. When we're telling him what to do, it might seem like we are always on him. Sit here, come here, go over there, stay there. All of these things add up over the days, the weeks, the months, the years as your child gets older. And this then manifests itself into just this underlying frustration where it's not the fact that, I mean, if your kid has autism or some other type of condition that has been diagnosed, then that may be different. However, one thing to look at as just another option, I'm not saying that this is the solution or that this is the only way, but one other thing to look at is, what is their day-to-day like? What are the things that are triggering them, and can you self-reflect upon it? So an example of this might be if it's difficult to get him to eat dinner, or if it's difficult to get him to eat lunch. He has no problem eating snacks. Snacks are easy. So we have to look at it like, well, do we cut snacks then and just have meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? That way there is no snack to be debated about. He might be full from just snacking rather than eating healthier portions of meals. It's just like little stuff throughout the day. Or do we just provide little things throughout the day and not have any formal sort of sit down and eat breakfast, sit down and eat lunch together type of family? And not saying that that has to be a permanent thing, but why not allow him to sort of convey what it is that he's comfortable with? Because he's going to develop his own personality, the things that he likes and dislikes, and some of these things might not be things he wants to do or on the time frame that we want him to do it with, or that we want him to do it in. And it came to another example of what we call bad words. So when he says stupid, we refer to that as like a bad word. Don't use that. Don't say that. And I mean, I'm sort of at an impasse here. Like, I think to myself, well, is this the hill we want to die on? Really trying to force him not to use this word? I mean, there are much more colorful words in the English language that he's going to be exposed to, use himself, and I'm sure here in either a work setting, school, whatever, they're descriptive words, they're hurtful words. I mean, there's a lot of words that can be deemed as bad. And so rather than focusing and honing in on that one thing, maybe flip it and say, well, I don't know why you're using that word. I don't use that word. Are there other words that can better describe how you're feeling? Are there other words you want to call me when you're mad? Because, at least for me, I feel like when I was younger, I would resort to that type of language, be it profanity or other, in like frustrating moments where I didn't have the vernacular on my side. And I think that when you're clear and you're level-headed, there's so many other words that you can use in order to convey how it is that you're feeling. I mean, just growing up, I remember middle school, I think was when I first started using profanity. And high school was just like the floodgates were open. This whole new dialogue had opened up for me. And it was much like the movie Inside Out. At the end, when they get the new control panel and like Anger sees, oh, these are all the curse words that he has access to. And it just got me thinking like, yeah, I may have very well overused a lot of profane words in lieu of other words that could better describe how I'm feeling or what it is I want to say. It would just be filler, where most people, when they don't know what to say, they'll use like a drag on or a tag word such as and, like, It's words like that were then replaced with the F word, effing this, effing that, mother effing whatever. And this was the way that I spoke as a young adult. I mean, now I don't as much, I should say. I don't as much. But it's one of those things. I should be leading by example. I don't want to say he cannot use these words when I know that it's his right to expression. But I want him to know how those words make me feel if he's using them towards me. And I want him to know that he's smarter than that. There are other words he can use to better convey what it is he wants to say. Now, fortunately, he's not. We don't watch a lot of wild television that's exposing him to a lot of other crazy things. But for the most part, it's just really putting out these tiny little, I wouldn't even say putting out these fires. I would more say just being those bumpers on the side of the lanes when you are, practice bowling or when you're bowling as a kid, and just really trying to prevent him from getting any gutter ball. We really want to keep him on the straight and narrow, or at least what we feel. We can only have a heading, and whether or not he hits it or is off in that direction, is to be determined. Eventually, all our lessons and all of our wisdom or our words or our interactions throughout the years will manifest themselves into becoming a part of his good conscience and that little voice inside when something is going to happen or when a decision can be made that he'll refer back to. So we cannot live his life for him, but we can do all that we can to ensure that he at least has the best shot. Now, when referring to things like that, like difficulties sitting down to eat, difficulties getting PJs on for bed, I've not reached the part of the book that tells me the definite, this is the difficult part, this is what you can do. But the part that I am at is making a list of those difficult things. And now the book provides a couple families that have rather long lists. Our list is not that long. It's only a few things. Bad words, getting dressed for bed, getting dressed for school when he was going to school before this whole shelter in place and schools closed, and playing nicely with his sister. And even then, it's very situational. It's not all the time. So we really have to hone in on, well, what is triggering it then? if these are difficulties, where are they coming from? So that's the next thing on the homework list for ourselves, is really taking a deeper look as to what's going on and what it is we can do about it. On the next episode of the podcast, I'll bring the book in. I'll probably refer to a couple other pages. But one of the things that really hit hard, or it didn't really hit hard, but it resonated with me, was the part that they were giving examples of the excuse that, well, they're just trying to get your attention. And that's not necessarily the case all the time, because that would denote that he is making these decisions to do things that get him in trouble in order to get our attention. And that would also mean that he understands and recognizes the difference between right and wrong already. And that's like a higher level of thinking for a 4-year-old. But what I feel like nails it to the T is that he's misunderstood and has been sort of over-parented, like very limited in what he could do, when he can do things. And, as new parents, the firstborn, you're never going to get it right. You're going to have a better understanding by the time baby number 2 comes around, but it's always a learning curve. There's always a learning curve. And so looking at it now, I can only hope that what I'm doing is the best for him and giving him 100% of what I can in terms of dedication, in terms of what I'm looking into, what I'm researching, all of these other things. So I'm going to keep it short with this one. Hopefully next video or next podcast, I'll have the desk set up. We'll have the camera. We'll have all that jazz. And yeah, we'll just keep on rolling with new content. But that's all I've got for you guys today. As always, till next time, see ya.